Hey everyone, today we're going to create some lead sounds and some bass sounds, and I'll show you how to put them together in a live production with improvised drums too. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun creating some sounds. I'm using the circuit as I usually do, so let's create a new synth patch. I'm in a new session as well, by the way, so everything's default here. So if, let's say we want to create a 303 emulated sound. Now the 303 is a mono synth, so we only need one oscillator at a time. It has a sawtooth or a square wave to choose from. So if I pick square wave, and I've got the volume up on the first oscillator, down on the other, if I swap those two around, you get your square wave. So I can use a macro to control which of those two oscillators sound. So I go to my modulation page. I'm going to pick as my modulation destination, I want the volume of oscillator 1. And if I go to the other, or one of the other controls, I can change that to be oscillator 2. Volume, there we go. Now, if I put the depth of one up and the other one down, and then change the way that macro works, I always get this the wrong way around, so that way, that way. There we go. So if I control with the macro, I go from sawtooth to square wave. So that's the first thing. Now, the 303, if I'm correct, has an 18 decibel filter, which we don't have here. We can't choose from that. So I'll just choose 12 in this instance. And if we take the filter cutoff all the way down and instead have it controlled by a macro, I tend to use, what's that, 5th macro. So I'll go to my modulation matrix again, pick on macro 5. I want filter cutoff as my destination and make that control positive. So if I turn the macro up, we control the cutoff. And of course, we need the resonance as well. So let's do macro number 6, destination resonance. Turn that all the way up. That sounds pretty good. Okay, now this is where the fun begins. So the envelope control, this is an amplitude envelope, and the 303 only has an attack, only has a decay envelope as far as I understand it. It doesn't have an attack. And we can basically have a pluck sound created by that downward slope on the envelope. So if I shorten that, we get a shorter sound. So again, using a macro, if I make that very short and then go to the modulation matrix, I'm going to use macro 3 for my amplitude envelope. And where are we? Envelope 1, decay. So it goes from the very short envelope shape all the way through to a longer one. Now we are dealing with a mono synth, so let's go to effects, change that to mono. And what we've also got in this control panel here, the voice one, is portamento. And of course the 303 does the slidey bassline sounds, and they're really cool. So let's have the portamento controlled by another macro. In this instance, I'm going to use 7. So if I go to my mod matrix, 7, I'm going to control portamento. Now, there's another way I could do this. I could have it so that the auto glide controls the slide between the notes, but that's a bit fiddly because you have to then program your pattern to make best use of that. But with the portamento control here on a macro, I can just do it whenever I want, make the notes slide. So let's give ourselves a basic pattern. I will change the scale because I prefer to work in a minor. And let's see what we've got just with a random selection of notes like that. So I want my pattern length just 8 beats. Getting there. What else? Filter distortion, we can have a play with that. We can also just apply distortion to the whole finished sound, and let's stick that on macro 8 as an effect. Now I'll leave the compensation for distortion up because otherwise the volume just gets louder and louder and louder as you turn the distortion up. So the compensation allows the distortion effect to take place without blowing the volume level through the roof and destroying my eardrums at the same time. So let's do macro 8, distortion, under effects, distortion level. And we have to go a bit careful with that. Let's give it a try. That's getting a bit 303 like. Getting there. What else? Filter envelope control. So filter envelope number 2 by default is assigned to the filter cutoff. And once again, let's make this a short pluck. And we'll use macro number 4, modulation 4, to filter envelope amount, not decay in this instance. Where are we? Envelope 2, modulation. There we are. And then we just adjust this slightly and have a listen. Not bad for a digital synth. Sounds a bit 303 like. You know that bit on the video where the host always says, can you like and subscribe? Yeah. Now, here's something that I've been thinking about doing a whole video about, so give me a shout if this is something that you like the sound of. But digital synths are perfectly, or the sound quality that you get from them is pretty much bang on every time because it's digital. There's no capacitors or valves or anything that can heat up and change in the circuitry, which then gives you variations in sound quality as an analog synth does. So that sort of imperfection in the sound is something that gives a lot of analog synths their character. So let's see if we can emulate a little bit of that using one of the LFOs here. I've got 2 that I can pick from. So we'll go with LFO number 1, a sine wave, and let's just temporarily assign that to the oscillator pitch so that we can just check the rate that it's playing at. So if I pick my modulation source as LFO1, and if I do plus and minus, then it will look at not just the top part of the waveform and assign a positive value to whatever we're changing, but it will also take account of the lower part of the waveform. So if I was to change that just to positive rather than positive and negative, it would just look at that part there and just increase a value and then put it back down to 0 rather than taking it all the way down. I'll give you an example. So LFO1, oscillator 1 and 2 pitch. If I put that all the way up, this is going to sound mental. So that's crazy, obviously. What we can do is just adjust that so that it's very slight imperfection on the pitch of the oscillator. And if I change the rate of that, I'll try and assign that a noise waveform. So we've got random sample and hold. And let me boost that back up again just so that we can check how much of an effect it's having. That's all over the show. It's barely perceptible, if at all noticeable, but it's those tiny little imperfections that give sound character sometimes. And what we can also do, just add the tiniest bit of noise. Just helps to dirty the sound up a little bit. And finally, the filter, if it's overpowered by whatever sound's going in, can cause distortion, and you can emulate that with this filter drive. So we'll just put a tiny amount on diode here. Okay, now I've got the TR-8S hooked up. Let's just have a very quick play with that and put a bit of delay and reverb on it. Not bad for a couple of minutes work. So we'll save that patch, download, and just for the purposes of the tutorial, we'll call it 303. What else? Synthesizer 2. Again, let's go for a clean patch from scratch. One of the things I like to do is to detune these two oscillators, but have them both playing at the same time. That tends to give like a discordant sound, which is pretty fun for techno, in my opinion. So let's also pick, I don't know. This is where a bit of a random approach to start with is sometimes really good. Just make up a couple of elements to work with. So I'll turn off the 303 sound for the moment. Okay. Again, our experimentation. What can we do? Let's change our filter settings again and assign those to a macro. So I'm going to go cut off on macro 5 as I did before. So this is nothing new here. And again, my amplitude envelope. So this is creating a simple pluck sound again. Amplitude, envelope, decay. Now we've got these two detuned slightly. Let's adjust the waveforms. Now this, because these are wavetable synthesizers, if I slide this control here, it scrolls through the wavetable and we can get some variation in how that sounds. Let's assign LFO number 1 to change the waveform position, or the wavetable position. So if I go modulation matrix, let's go LFO plus and minus once again, but this time instead of the pitch, let's go oscillator 1, and we want, it's actually pulse width it's called, but it's the wavetable position. I believe they've called it pulse width because if you look at things like the square wave, the variation in pulse width is created through a wavetable, really. So there we go. That sort of sing-song effect is created by the scroll through the wavetable. And if we put oscillator 2 up, there we go. It's a bit discordant, kind of fun. What else can we do? Let's have a go at maybe changing the pitch of this with wavetable, with LFO 2. Again, just experimenting. Let's go sawtooth. Let's have a downward slope and assign that to the pitch of digital oscillator 2. So we got LFO 2 and just oscillator 2 pitch. So that's what we're getting from oscillator 2. So maybe that's a little bit too much. The other thing is that's not re-triggering each time a note is triggered. So if I change that to be one shot, every time a note's triggered, that waveform will restart. There we go. And I think maybe if I add some unison to that and fatten up the waveform. So if I turn up the density and just very slightly detune the duplicates of the waveform, get a bit of a phasing effect there. So what does that sound like with both oscillators? Pretty lame as it stands. Let's see what happens if we pitch the pattern down a bit. And we can give ourselves a bit more decay to the sound, to the sound. That could be kind of fun, especially with a lot of reverb. So let's turn up the reverb on that. And turn down the pre-effects volume and turn up the post-effects volume. So we've got quite a lot of power to the reverb. Okay. Again, let's mess with the filter resonance, which I want on macro 6. So again, filter resonance. There we go. And we'll do, I'll do the filter envelope again on macro 4. This is something that I could probably pre-design a template for, but I've just not got around to it. So filter envelope amount. There we go. Okay. We've also got an equalizer on here. It's a bit loud. We've also got an equalizer on here that I can use to adjust. So there we go. We've cut off some of the treble that's a little bit heavy, and let's boost the chorus effect here. And if I adjust my volumes very slightly. Now, there's something and nothing in that, but let's have a go at jamming with it just for a few minutes and see what we get. I hope you enjoyed that. It's not so much a tutorial, more of an exploration of sounds. I'm looking to do quite a few more videos on improvisation and how you can create an interesting set or an interesting performance. So if that's the kind of stuff you're after, please do check back down in the comments and leave something for me to read. And I'll be really happy to pass on the things that I've learned and the ideas that I've got that might help you. So take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.